Next up, the black notes. Now you need to know the white note names really well to do this tutorial. You need to be able to hit any white note and name it straight away, so E, A, D, B, C, and so on. So if you haven't learned the white notes yet, follow the link just above this video and work through that tutorial first. However, assuming you have worked through that tutorial, let's get started. So I said that the black notes are named in terms of the white notes. Let me show you what I mean by that. The easiest way for me to demonstrate the black note names is if I just give you some examples. So you already know that this note is D, D middle. Well, the black note just below it is D flat, and the black note just above it is D sharp. So D, D flat, D sharp. Or if I take G, remember Gaga, the note just below G is G flat, and the note just above it is G sharp. So if you take any white note, the note just below it is flat, and the one just above it is sharp. So flat is down, and sharp is up. Well, that makes a certain amount of sense if you think about it. If I take this chord and play it really low on the piano, it has this very kind of muddy, dull, flat kind of sound. Whereas if I take that chord and play it really high up, it has a kind of sharp, piercing kind of sound. So I think it makes sense that flat is lower and sharp is higher. There is one confusing thing about this, which is that you may have worked out already that if this is G and that's G sharp, well then isn't that also A flat? Because this black note is just above G, but also just below A. Well, you'd be completely right. Every black note can be named one of two ways. So if we take this black note, you could call that C sharp, or you could call it D flat. This one, you could say is D sharp, or it's E flat. This one is F sharp, or G flat. So every single black note can be described as a sharp or a flat. So at this point you might be wondering, well, how would you know if you have a black note whether it's a sharp or a flat? Well, in any given piece, it's going to be given to you. If you're a sight reading piece, if it's written as a C sharp, you don't need to worry about it also being a D flat. But there is a logic to it. So if I give you a couple of examples, you'll see why. It really depends on the context. So let's suppose you have these 5 notes in a row in a piece. A, B, something, D, E. And then we're wondering, is this a C sharp or a D flat? Well, if it's a C sharp, the notes become A, B, C sharp, D, E, which kind of makes sense. Or if it's D flat, the notes are A, B, D flat, D, E. Well, the second way we go from A, B to D flat, so A, B, D flat, we jump over the note name C, and then we have 2 types of D, D flat and D. A, B, D flat, D, E. Whereas if we call this C sharp, we have A, B, C sharp, D, E. So it makes more sense to call that note C sharp in that context, because that way you have one of each note name. A, B, C sharp, D, E. So it's as if the C sharp is replacing the C. Instead of this, we just change that to this note. Or if I give you another example, suppose you had this sequence of notes. A, something, C, D, E. Well, here we could call this A sharp or B flat. And hopefully you'll have worked out already that if you call it A sharp, you have A sharp, C, D, E. So you then have 2 types of A and A sharp. Whereas if you call it B flat, you have A, B flat, C, D, E. Again, you have one of every note name. So in that case, it would make sense to call this a flat, B flat. So whether a note is a sharp or a flat really depends on the context. Now there's one more thing to teach you before we finish, which is, let's do a couple more examples again. I said that this is D, that's D flat, and and that's D sharp. What if we take E? That's E flat. But then what about E sharp? Well, it can't be this note, that's F sharp. E sharp is actually the same note as F. So sharp and flat just mean the very next note up and the very next note down. So for a note like D, the very next note up is a black note and the very next note down is a black note. But for E, the very next note down is a black note, but the note just above E is an F. So E sharp is the same note as F. Now, if that sounds confusing, don't worry too much about it. You won't encounter things like E sharps or C flats for quite a while, but I thought I may as well give you a head up well in advance so you don't get confused when it happens. I don't think it's too complicated. If I just give you more examples, hopefully it'll make sense. So that's C, C sharp is just above, and C flat is the same note as B. So note that C flat isn't this note, that would be B flat, that's the one just below B. C flat is the same as B. And really, if you think about it, it isn't too confusing. After all, this note could be D sharp or E flat. And it just so happens that, let's say, this note could be F, or it could be E sharp. Now, it's much, much, much more likely to be F. It'll be very rarely that this is actually an E sharp. Only if the piece has lots and lots of black notes in it will it be an E sharp. So, you know, when you're learning piano, especially if you're learning the classical way and sight reading things, you're very unlikely to encounter things like E sharp and C flat for a long time. But if you come across them, now you know what they mean. So what I want you to do now is just go and name lots of notes and then find them on the keyboard. So say A sharp, and then play an A sharp just above A, or say D flat, and play a D flat just below D, B flat, F sharp, maybe include some of the white notes too, C flat, B sharp, be the same as C, and so on.